Censorship, freedom of speech. What lies in store for us? Well, there's a lot of uncertainty, and we talked about this on Due Dissident's show yesterday. So if you missed out on it, there was a lot of surprises, ups and downs, and a future uncertain. So what do I mean by this? Well, there were two events that took place: Rage Against the War Machine, and of course, Rescue the Republic. And in it, not only did Russell at Against the War Machine drop a heavy speech speaking truth to power, but so did Jimmy Dore as well. And he was one of the few people to actually talk about the crisis in Gaza to an audience that wasn't exposed by it. And the thing is, this whole event was, I believe, 6 hours long, maybe give or take between the hours. And Jimmy Dore was the only one that brought up Palestine and what's happening there. So I actually have just a few short minutes of his speech to the people at this event to rescue the Republic. And I think it's only fair that we hear his side of the story, hear his speech, and really what was going on at this entire event. I also have Matt Taibbi's speech as well at Rescue the Republic, including from our oh-so-fantastic corporate overlords who talk about censoring us as well. Now, for those of you who don't know, Hardlens Media, we have gone through the gauntlet of being censored and suppressed. It's not a lot of fun when your channel is destroyed or demonetized, shadow ban, all of that. It is very, very difficult to rebuild your brand and rebuild your audience. And after you go through it a number amount of times, it is a tough swamp to escape out of. So let's go ahead and pull up this video here from Jimmy Dore. Shout out to all you lovely, beautiful people. Let's go ahead and play this video.
And they can do it to anybody. They were doing it to stop Cop City protesters who were protesting the expansion of the police state. They used the same RICO statute and the same grand jury to prosecute them that they did Donald Trump. That shows you if they can do it to them, they'll do it to anybody who stands up against the establishment. It could be me, it could be you, it could be Jill Stein, Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders. No matter who it is, they're going to use lawfare and make you a fucking criminal, because that's the name of the game today. So we have to stand up against it, and we have to stand up for everybody's freedom of speech. Freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is not for the speech that we like. It's for the speech that we hate. When I grew up in Chicago, literal Nazis would march every year. They would march in Skokie, which is a suburb filled with Jewish people, and the Jewish people let them march because they loved freedom of speech more than they hated Nazis. So that's how much we have to love freedom of speech. Right now, there's a wave of censorship happening in protests. That means we have to stand up for the right of protest for pro-Palestinian protesters, because if they can shut them down, they can shut us down. And the people who want to shut down the pro-Palestinian protesters say, well, those college protesters, they don't even know what they're protesting for. And it's a good thing they don't, because if they did, they'd be fucking right. I have my Zionist friends who try to get me to go along with Israel. They say to me, they go, Jimmy, you know, I know you support the LGBTQ. You know who doesn't? Hamas. Hamas doesn't support gay people. What do you say to that, Jimmy? I say, oh, I guess we should slaughter their children. Anyway. People say that Israel's the only democracy in the Middle East. You know why? Because we overthrew all the other fucking democracies so we could steal their oil.
Now, no one talks about how Iran was once had a national government, especially in the 1950s. Since when they established that national government, the whole goal, or at least one of the goals, was to nationalize the oil to uplift the citizens. But British and American oil companies didn't like that. They felt that was a no bueno. And while the Truman administration was back and forth on what to do, as soon as Eisenhower got into office, and I think this is where Eisenhower finally realized the horror of the military-industrial complex, Eisenhower, or people associated with his regime, as well as the British government as well at the time, worked together hand in hand to remove a national government and establish the Shah, who ran a dictatorship monarchy, which was then overthrown by the Ayatollah. We had a democracy there. Geez, imagine how society and the world at whole would be if there was actually other functioning, established, healthy democracies. Maybe we wouldn't be having these problems. Maybe things would be going well. It would be sunshines and rainbows and everybody singing and dancing. But that's a bridge too far, because if there's a profit to be made, if there's a buck to be made, you better believe that the top 1%, the sociopaths, will be more than happy to tear down that reality and give us the dystopian nightmare that, hey, surprise, surprise, we are living in. What happened to the other democracies? We got rid of them.
The only thing that scares the establishment is what's happening at this rally here today. People from the left and the right coming together to realize we have more in common that divides us, and we share a common enemy. And that common enemy is the oligarchy, who did a controlled demolition of our economy during COVID. And they want me to hate my neighbor for all the pain I'm feeling because he wouldn't take a vaccine that didn't work the way they said it did in the first fucking place. Well, I'm not going to hate my neighbor. I'm going to love my neighbor because they're hurting just like me. And I'm going to join to overthrow those cocksucking oligarchs, because that's the only thing that's going to work. Yeah. And if everybody on the right to just realize not everybody on the left likes Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and Demented Joe. We just want to end those wars, invest that money back in America, and have healthcare that doesn't bankrupt us. And if you could figure that out, it would go a long way. And if everybody on the left could realize that everybody on the right is a white supremacist Nazi gun nut, they're just fucking gun nuts.
We all can get along. We all can actually build a better future.
And I love them, and I love you too. Stay together. Fuck the media. Fuck the media.
Hey, you know what? You got to reach out to the crowd. You got to reach out to people. You have to be willing to speak to other people. Now, look, the whole event, Rescue the Republic, Due Dissidents, and we actually did a breakdown of that entire event. Russell was there on the ground, as well as was Jose Vega, where they did a lot of great interviews. If you missed out on that live stream, folks, please stay tuned. Due Dissidents will be uploading those full interviews in their entirety onto their YouTube channel, so please be sure to check it out. But the one issue is that no one at that Rescue the Republic brought up Palestine. And while he did get some applause, it's very important that if we're going to be anti-war, if we're going to be protesting, and if we're going to be free speech absolutists, we have to talk about the real dangers of what happens when you censor protests that you don't like. Now, look, there are bad people out there. I get it. There are people who abuse the First Amendment. But the power of the First Amendment is ensuring that we speak out against injustice. These wars are bullshit. These wars are madness. And every day that passes by, why do I get this sinking dread that we're watching closer and closer to getting to the sequel we've all been dreading for, World War III? And it's not the people that want it. It's our politicians, our leaders. They're playing this game back and forth of who's going to do what. Well, things can only go on for so long until somebody sees that shiny red button and makes it happen. We can do better. I want to pull this up here from Matt Taibbi, where he had an interview in regards to his speech at the Rescue the Republic rally. So let's go on and pull up this video here. This was Matt Taibbi on Fox News. Now, I know that we did bring up during our conversation on Due Dissidents, Matt Taibbi, giving his thoughts on the election between Kamala versus Trump. I understand why he is upset at the Democrats and why he could be leaning towards Trump. Again, just interpretation here. But when you get abused by the Democratic Party so much and they start this massive wave of censorship, I understand why people would be angry. But everybody, we have to be critical of the entire system as a whole. And that means also being critical of Donald Trump. Yes, Trumpers, you got to be critical of your guy too, because the Republican Party has been on board for censorship, just like the Democratic Party. And if they're going to silence voices like the Democrats are, no party will save us. These politicians won't save us.
Look at our nation's capital, where today those fighting to preserve America's liberties, including free speech, will gather on the National Mall in what they're calling the push to rescue the republic. Our next guest is one of the featured speakers. He's journalist Matt Taibbi, and he joins us now. Matt, why don't you tell us about this event, especially for those who are in the D.C. area? They can still go see it. What's happening? What can they expect?
Yes, Rachel, good morning. So it's between the Washington Monument and the World War II Memorial, and it's a slew of speakers beginning, I think, about noon and going all the way to the end of the evening till about 7 o'clock. It includes people like Russell Brand, Tulsi Gabbard, myself, Brett Weinstein, Jimmy Dore, and others. Mostly people who've been censored over the last few years, and we're all here to speak about various threats to the Bill of Rights. My particular assignment is the First Amendment.
Yeah, I believe that Jillian Michaels also there. What I find interesting about this event is that it's bipartisan, and we hear so much, across the networks of we need to unify, we need to come together. Here's this bipartisan group of people just getting together to rescue the republic and specifically to stand for free speech. Have you seen an array of media outlets trying to cover this?
Now, look, well, I'm glad Fox News is talking about it. Remember, folks, Fox News is equal to CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC. All of its corporate media, all of it's owned by the top 1%. Now, I like that the story is getting attention, but remember, it's about controlling perspectives and points of view. And this whole idea of rescue the republic, remember, Democrats, you're not doing yourselves any favor by censoring and canceling people, especially with those proxy liberal groups or activist groups that want to silence and suppress individuals. When I say keep your heads on a swivel, I mean it. You have to keep your heads on a swivel at all times. We are living in very uncertain areas in which, again, the idea of censorship and those that are controlling it, be it a party or politician, everybody's going to probably flock to the opposition. But remember, the opposition has shown in the past that it will be on board for censorship too. Don't trust the two-party system.
Or is it sort of just certain outlets?
Well, it's been mostly uncovered everywhere outside of conservative media, but I've noticed that...
Don't forget independent media, Matt. Come on.
The mainstream press has begun to descend on Washington this weekend to do what I would call the obligatory hit pieces. I think they've already written what they're going to say about this event.
Right.
They see this as a stalking horse for, a kind of heterodox horseshoe theory, pro-Trump movement. It is not that. These people are all very different from one another. Most of them, I would say, were lifetime Democrats. And we're not here to talk really about partisan politics. We're here to talk about what's going on in terms of threats to our basic freedoms and liberties.
Can you just this is a short segment, but I do want you to briefly explain what these threats are, the sort of confluence of government forces and the digital world where so much free speech takes place or should be taking place.
Yeah, so just the other day, former presidential candidate John Kerry gave a speech, or he was at the World Economic Forum, and he talked about how the First Amendment was a major block to their efforts to hammer out of existence what he calls disinformation, because he says it's too hard to govern now. It's too hard to...
And yes, that is very true. Shout out to Trash Panda. Look, he did not mention Palestine or Gaza. It would have been better if he did. That's why we got Jimmy Dore. But nonetheless, at this point, I have maybe a higher standard, but were it not for Russell and Jimmy, especially at those two separate events, again, we have to bring awareness and attention to these issues. Just because others aren't speaking doesn't mean that we can't speak up. So that's what we have to do.
Obtain consensus. So they use digital disinformation. They use digital censorship basically to wipe out speech they don't like. And it's not about truth or falseness. It's really about whether or not you approve of official narratives.
Yeah, you've done a good job, too, of exposing that we're often paying for these disinformation, whether they're NGOs or they're parts of our government, our State Department, that are funding these organizations that are out to censor us digitally and otherwise. Matt, you're great. And I love that you listed that list. It includes Russell Brand. So the redcoats are even for the First Amendment.
Right.
I love
Zuby.
that.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
love that. And also RFK Jr., who said that if you're against censorship, you are, it's disqualifying as a commander in chief of the United States of America. And so we should take that into
I
account.
agree with him.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I couldn't agree more. And we have on record Tim Waltz and others saying so. So that they're for that. So thank you so much for joining us, Matt, and good luck today. And I hope people in the DC area join you. It's a wonderful event.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. Look at
Now, there's a couple other things here too, because we are in a dangerous situation. Now, what do I mean a dangerous situation? Okay. Because while Jimmy and Matt are speaking about free speech, while all of us here at Heartlands Media, we are speaking about free speech, I want everyone to understand that we have a political system that is on board for trying to control the media. I know, and I've been seeing in the live stream chat here too, somebody brought up, hey, every time like I'm having a serious conversation or I bring up Jimmy Dore or something else that triggers somebody, like they shut down. Well, that shows that the establishment has successfully brainwashed a lot of people to get rid of their ability to think critically. Now, there are commentators and politicians that I don't like. But guess what? I'm a people person. Now, I'm only speaking for myself. I want to see how another person sees the perspective, the story, the situation at hand. And I always tell you, my audience, that the best way you guys and gals are going to be awesome and be educated is if you check out other sources of information too. What I say here on this show, I'm giving my opinion, my analysis, my perspective, my point of view on here. Now, the takeaway is you guys then need to check out other sources too. That's how we become well-rounded individuals. That's how we become more educated. But also that shows us being one step ahead of the corporate media that for a long time has successfully brainwashed a lot of us. I too have been a victim of the corporate media establishment, the two-party system narrative. We've all fallen for it. We all got to carry that L, but that doesn't mean that we have to forever carry that shame. It means we take it off our back and we push forward to try and see the other side. And dare I say it, maybe get to a better future. But when you have jag-off politicians like this knockoff dime store version of the Munsters, you know that we got ourselves a fight.
And I think the dislike of and anguish over social media is just growing and growing and growing. And it's part of our problem, particularly in democracies, in terms of building consensus around any issue. It's really hard to govern today. You can't, there's no, the referees we used to have to determine what's a fact and what isn't a fact are kind of, been eviscerated to a certain degree. And people go and that people self-select where they go for their news or for their information. And then you just get into a vicious cycle. So it's really, really hard, much harder to build consensus today than at any time in the 45, 50 years I've been involved in this. And there's a lot of discussion now about how you curb those entities.
Discussion how you curb those entities being dissenting voices, critical thinkers, free thinkers. Now, Crow Feather, be nice. He looks like a dime store Muppet. Shame on you. Where'd you learn to be that mean? I don't care. Hey, be nice, people. I want all of you to be nice. But this is a signal and a sign. Now, in 2018, I keep bringing up this story. When Heartlands Media was on radio, everybody cheered when Alex Jones got deplatformed and censored. Now, look, there's a lot of things Alex Jones has said that I don't like. But as soon as I saw him get Thanos out of existence during that time in 2018, dread fell over that radio station. Me and Daniel knew what was going to happen, that everybody was going to be put on the chopping block. And we were laughed. We were excommunicated by a lot of people. We were dismissed by a lot of people. Now, those same people are wondering why they can't do certain posts or put many kind of comments on social media anymore. or why people are being deplatformed and censored. It's because that was a sign of things to come. And you better believe that politicians like this, and I picked a horrible time to pause them, but okay, whatever, are more than happy to execute that order of censorship.
In order to guarantee that you're going to have, some accountability on facts, et cetera. But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence. So what we need is to win the ground, win the right to govern by hopefully having, winning enough votes that you're free to be able to implement change. Now, obviously, there are some people in our country who are prepared to implement change in other ways. And
so
that's
you're
really
questioning
dangerous.
really if democracy can survive unregulated social media.
I think democracies are very challenged right now.
Well, first we have a constitutional republic, and democracy in its pure form, the idealist version of it, has not existed. It always gets a form in becoming a republic, or either that a constitutional monarchy, or either that becoming a parliamentary system. I mean, a pure democracy, a pure 100% democracy has not yet been achieved. But the whole idea of saying that democracy is a difficult thing, well, gee, Mr. Politician, when you are supposed to represent the people might tell said politician to go F themselves if the politician is a corrupt SOB. And we've been dealing with that for decades. Hey, boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, and Gen Z, collectively, can any of you recall a time yourself, or actually that maybe hearing from your loved ones or family members or your community, the time of which our own constitutional republic, our quote-unquote democracy, represented you and fought for you? Can anyone recall a time? Type 1 for yes, kid, I do, and shame on you. Type 2, that's a very good question. I don't think so. I wonder how many 2s will be in the chat.
And have not proven they can move fast enough or big enough to deal with the challenges that we are facing. And to me, that is part of what this race, this election is all about. Will we break the fever in the United States?
And hey, adding more fuel to the fire. I know it's only 28 seconds. Please, folks, don't cancel me. Hill Dog, tell us how we control the media.
The press needs a consistent the press that's not supporting Trump blatantly, very persistently, the press that's trying to be the press, be objective, be, reporting the facts. The press needs a consistent narrative about the danger that Trump poses.
So it all goes back to Trump. And by posing the danger that Trump's the end-all, be-all to the republic, you know what that opens the door for? Censorship, 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 cancel, cancel, cancel. How dare you think that my favorite politician's a mean, bad, corrupt person? I'm going to make sure the political police come knocking at your door. But oh, wait, that's already happening to a lot of people on the left and on the right. That's already happening. We've done stories about that. Liberals, you're afraid of what Donald Trump may do, but you are doing what you're afraid he's doing by giving the green light to the politicians to cancel and also add in censorship laws and do so much more to us. So when Jimmy Dore is speaking about the dangers, what's happening to us, whether you're on the left or on the right, we are all in this boat. And no, Donald Trump isn't going to save us. Nobody is. The politician is not the knight on the hill. It's the people. We're the ones that have to be the cavalry for ourselves. We have to be the relief force for ourselves. We have to be the legions in our own right to actually step up and defend the First Amendment. Can't you not see that this is the time in which we, the people, have to speak out? It doesn't matter who sits in the White House. The fight is still happening. And no matter who wins, liberals, Kamala could win. And if so, I do think it'll be far more rough, especially with the censorship laws. But even if Trump wins, Trumpers, It's not going to be any degree of difference. I mean, there might be some subtleties here or there, but there will be censorship. And I believe everyone has a right to their First Amendment here in this country. And if we lose this, it's never coming back. I want to end this segment with a story I've played before about free speech, about censorship. I will not interrupt it. I'm going to play it in its full entirety. And while you may not agree with who he is and what his show was all about, before he passed away, I think these powerful words from Jerry Springer are words that we can all agree with in our own right. Take it away, Jerry.
Now here's another point of view. Tonight, Jerry Springer.
Thanks, Allison. Back when I was the mayor of Cincinnati, the neo-Nazis, knowing I was Jewish, figuring this would be a good test, applied for a parade permit. They wanted to march through our downtown on a Saturday afternoon. Well, I didn't know what to do. You see, much of my family was exterminated in the concentration camps of Germany during World War II. And I didn't think, in respect to my parents, who were survivors of it all, that I could go along with the permit. And yet I knew my constitutional obligation as mayor. So what was I to do? I called my folks. I would respect their wishes. I didn't tell them, but I'd already decided if they didn't want me to let the Nazis march, I would resign and let the next mayor approve the permit. But my dad reminded me that this is America, that this is the freedom we sought when we escaped to here. So we must never be a party to silencing any person or any point of view, no matter how despicable. If what is being said is nonsense or mean or spiteful or dangerous, or if the person uttering it is unworthy, let the words and ideas fall of their own merit in the free marketplace of ideas, not because they were silenced or denied a platform. My parents lost their parents and brothers and cousins to Hitler, and yet they still said, sign the permit, let them march. Last week, the general manager here announced that I'd agreed to his request to do commentaries from time to time on NBC5 News. I'd been doing commentaries for over 20 years and won 7 Emmys for them, so whether I was qualified to do them didn't seem to be in question. It was a reasonable request, and so I said yes. But one of the anchors said she was deeply offended, that I wasn't up to her standards, that because of the admittedly wild and crazy talk show I do, I would taint everyone who worked here, that I was the poster child for the great unwashed of our society. This elitist snobbery that only people who meet an anchor's approval should be permitted to share the set is now being hidden in the self-righteous cries of journalistic integrity. Bull, and you can fill in the rest of that word. Please understand, we have no journalism in a free society unless we have commentary from all parts of the community, from the poor, the disenfranchised, the left, the right, the outrageous, and yes, the different, not just from the endless array of Walter Cronkite wannabes that populate every news program in America so that virtually every news program looks alike. Look, I am sorry the anchor quit. I'm sorry she found it necessary this week to use me as a stepping stone to martyrdom. But as much as I detest the elitist snobbery on this issue, I would never, ever suggest that she doesn't have a place on our airwaves. She does. But here in America, the rest of us do too. I wish she could have met my dad.
I am concerned about what lies in store for us after this election cycle. I really can't put any stock behind any of the two main candidates. I do wish the third parties will be successful in getting enough votes to be recognized. Maybe that'll be a perfect stepping stone in which we can maybe have an alternate voice in our political atmosphere, but it's more than just politics. It's the diligence and the work of the people, the citizens, all of us, no matter what state you live in, small town, big city. We are in this fight. I know what it's like to be censored. I know what it's like to be losing everything that you created. It is a terrible feeling. I've also seen many people post, be they large influencers or just regular people on social media, have their accounts terminated or shadow banned, whatever. The fight for the First Amendment is an ongoing fight that requires vigilance. It never is ever going to end. This is something that the establishment wants gone. I believe in its existence. I believe in its right. I believe in the right to protest. And yes, even those who are very hateful or evil. Because as soon as you start silencing everybody, we are all going to be silenced. The First Amendment is our right. And maybe this is my idealism, my greatest of weaknesses. I like to believe that the world is filled with good people. And when there is hate speech, when there is insanity and madness, good people will step up. Maybe that's my belief. And maybe I am wrong. Maybe I am. Maybe I need to come to terms with that. But I've seen good people step up. And I'm seeing more people awaken. Not enough, though, but more people awaken about what we could potentially lose. Free speech, the right to protest, the right to speak out, the right to push back. So shout out to Jimmy Dore. Shout out to anyone else that's speaking out. Shout out to those who are speaking truth to power. Because if we remain silent, nobody will ever speak again.